All right, our final panel is the role of connection in recovery. And we have on the far end John and David and Penelope. Take it away, guys.
I'm on the far end, I guess. I've been using that a lot. You sure are, now, me. My name is Jeff, and I'm the alcoholic today. Can you hear me all right? A little louder. Now get the mic in there. You're too tall. I'm too tall. Well. Is that better?
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, put a big book under his finger. What do they call these? So, you guys are eating into my time here. Well, first I want to say that all I can talk about is my own experience. I used to be really good at universalizing my experience. That is, if it's true for me, it's true for you. This is my opinion and it should be yours. I don't do that as much anymore. So I can only talk about what happened with me. And also, much of what I feel and think about connection today is different from what I thought when I got here and for many years. This is all in retrospect. And I think for me that's kind of an important thing to recognize. When I was really young, I loved going out into the fields. I grew up in a town called Thousand Oaks, which was a very, very small town when I grew up. And I liked to just go out by myself in the fields, and I felt really connected that way. But as I got a little bit older, I started feeling more and more disconnected. My first drink, I was a late bloomer. I didn't start drinking until 9. And my father, I was really, really sick with a cold. And my brother was really, really sick with a hangover. He was 9 years older than me, still is. And so he made us hot toddies. And boy, that was good. I remember how good that felt. And then I started in theater, doing stage plays at 11. And that felt really, really good, to be with those people and to be on stage where I had, they gave me the words, they gave me the movement, they told me the emotions, and I could do that. But it also, strangely enough, feels very disconnected after the fact. Even though I was pretty well known for portraying parts that people felt really connected. That's great. And I was also, what a lot of actors are, I was one of those guys that didn't want to have to deal with the people. I was out the back door by the time when the play was over. I was out the back door and zooming away doing a hamburger or something. But I was looking for that connection. I didn't know that. I was about 19. You guys will love this. My first ordination paper was in 1969. It was Universal Life Church, but I took it seriously. And I was seeking. I was really seeking. I got into yoga, got into all these different things. As you will probably recall, I guess I was about 67, because I was in college and was 17 years old, and I got involved with the anti-war movement, a group called the Resistance. And for me, I recognize now that too was about connection. My brother had been in Vietnam, came back and said, "You're not going." No way. But I still didn't feel really connected. I loved taking psychedelics because I always felt so connected. The problem was I kept coming down. I was one of the few at the time that I remember that would get high on a psychedelic and carry around a gallon jug of wine because I needed my alcohol. I ended up getting involved with there was a whole charismatic movement in those days, and so I became involved with a group that was charismatic, and it felt really good. I think that's one of the things that religion, one of the reasons religion works for people is because it feels good, and it felt good. And I got my second ordination papers in '71 within the context of that. And I spent 9 years doing that, going all over the country, putting on shows, playing music, playing guitar, and I used to, and that kind of thing. And I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. Didn't feel connected anymore with it. And so I turned my back on Jesus, which, if you know anything, you know that that's damnation right there. And I left. And I came back to California. And part of why I left, I think, is because I do a lot of communions. I really like to lead communions. And I left and really went whole hog into my drinking and using. And I always felt really connected that way too, but even in the bars I went to, I didn't go to bars where fights would break out most of the time. I went to bars with the old guys. I was in my late 20s and 30s at the time, and I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to drink and talk. That's what I wanted to do. I thought talking was the key to being connected. And it didn't really work out too well. By the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1981, I really didn't think there was a way for me to go. And when I saw all that stuff on the wall about God, I thought, man, I am screwed. Because I turned my back on Jesus. So there's no shot for me. But I felt something in those rooms. They used to say, it's not the words, it's the music of Alcoholics Anonymous that you listen to. It's under the words. And I think the danger in belief systems and building towers of Babel is that we misidentify the meaning. You know, the meaning gets eaten by words, basically, when we start putting it into words. I wrote a lot of poetry, and one of the things I love about poetry is you say things with words that you can't say in an academic way. So for me, and I believe to this day now, that connection is really what works in Alcoholics Anonymous. Not just one drunk talking to another, but a bunch of drunks being together. And I've come to feel that it's not about what I believe or you believe. My very first sponsor told me, I don't care what you believe, it's what you do that's going to make a difference. And that really helped me because I had all these beliefs. You just have to read this 24-hour day book. You guys know what that is? And that 24-hour day book just pissed me off. I said, this thing really pisses me off because it was the wrong theology. You know? And he said, don't read it. Oh my God. And I was real fortunate. There were a bunch of people when I got sober who were atheists and agnostics and everything else, and they scream and yell and fight from the podium because there were 120 or 300 people in the room. And then they'd go out to coffee and have a great time. And that's the AA I remember. That's the AA I like. I don't like homogenized AA. You know, the homogeneity just doesn't work. So I really do think that connectedness is what makes it all happen. Thanks.
I'm Dave, and I'm an alcoholic. Hey. Yeah, I continue to be amazed that I can hear someone say something as you just did, and I think, Jesus Christ, that's exactly what I think. You know, why am I still surprised that you guys tell me stuff that reminds me of me? Yeah, that's pretty much, I got nothing to add, but I will anyway.
Because I got a lot more.
So, yeah, I've been completely disconnected life. I mean, even in as far back as high school, I had 3 different personalities because I was athletic and smart, and I did drugs. So I had those 3 crowds, and I was a different person. I was playing a role, you know. And I never knew this till about a year ago. Well, and I'm still learning. But so in 2000, the kind of disconnection, I think this illustrates it best. In 2009, at the end of the year, I got pancreatitis for the first time. It's really brutally painful, and you spend weeks in the hospital with nothing at all by mouth, no ice chips. Nothing. Well, you get to watch it. That's good. But it's not really worth it to get. Anyway, I quit drinking after that first episode for 9 months without anything. In fact, I had a bottle of Stoli at my desk at home, just thinking that it would be better for me not to get in the car and go, because then I wouldn't be able to stop it. So I kept it there, but then I went to a wedding and I had a few drinks, became even a better drinker than I was before, and I got pancreatitis again. Same drill, everything. Then I stayed sober maybe a month and got pancreatitis, again. I did that about 8 times. And each time I thought, Jesus, I'll remember this pain, but I don't. I remember it as if in the third person kind of thing. It just doesn't do anything to this day. I mean, that's not what keeps me sober. What keeps me sober is what John said, and my effort to really actually connect with people, which I don't find very easy to do. This kind of thing is easy because, you're way over there. And sometimes it's so hard for me that, I just don't answer the phone. I got a call today when I was driving. I said, we're calling, and I have to, I'm working on it. But for me, the disconnection with myself, with my own, I don't think I really felt the pain. I just observed the pain. I never felt love for my first wife. I just sort of understood what the concept was and played around with that. The only thing really I was ever connected to was booze, and that didn't work out so well for me. This is better, but it's much harder, and it's much more visceral. I agree with whoever said that it isn't so. I tend to intellectualize everything. It's just my nature and my training and my careers, everything. That's just what it is. But I never sort of learned how to feel. I went to see, I have a therapist that I see, and during the second visit, I was talking about something that had happened in 2005, which was a bad year for me. And I was watering up, and he asked me what I was feeling, and I said, overwhelmed. And he said, is that it? And I said, yeah, that's it. And he said, you're feeling sad. And I said, oh, what's that? So I also want to make one last point that I really think connection is the whole deal too, and I think it so strongly that everything that anyone ever says, I can, at least the way I understand things, I can reduce it to something to do with connection. Honesty, rigorous honesty. That's all about connection too, the way I see it. And so yeah, it's important. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm not an alcoholic. My experience on connection is having grown up in a family that we didn't talk about feelings. It was all talking about a recipe for life, and it was all about doing. So there wasn't really connection on the visceral level. It was about what could be done about tasks. So I didn't learn it until way after college because it was all about education, about connection or about feelings. I didn't even think too much about what other people were really doing. It's just more about sort of performing, playing that role, and looking like I was supposed to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. And that's what life was. And then alcoholism came in. I was a much later bloomer. I didn't drink until after college. I guess I missed out on those fun times. But plenty of evidence. So when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I remember that first sort of aha moment of coming in. It's like, wow, this is home. People are talking about a language I've always known on the inside, but didn't have the word to describe, and that were feelings. Just we didn't talk about it when I was younger. My family still doesn't talk about them. Childhood friends that I grew up with still don't talk about that. It's in these rooms that I hear about feelings, and I can look in people's eyes and get that feeling of sincerity that when somebody says, hey, how you doing? They really mean it. They really want to know. And they're not going to go, oh, I got to go to lunch, or oh, my phone's ringing. People really want to know. And when I walk in the rooms today, I feel the same way. I get to take that outer mask off. I don't have to have a persona or be something else. I just come as I am, and it's one of the only places I've ever felt that way on this planet. And I've been all over the world. And for some of them, I've been in churches, temples. It's in these rooms. It's my family. It's the place I get to be where I want to be. Now let me tell you another story. From California, San Francisco, and I did a lot of my undergraduate at UC Santa Cruz, and my graduate at Berkeley, so I'm a little on the liberal side. And for a big awakening when I came here. And also, I got sober in the rooms around San Francisco. I can honestly say, either I didn't hear it or I didn't notice. We didn't say the word God a lot. Neither did we use a lot of cliches. And I came here, and in the rooms, I found a lot of cliches and a lot of words about, well, God's doing for me today what I can't do for myself, and live and let live. Just God, God, God. And I started to get that feeling again of not being connected. And I found myself mimicking people, the words God, or sprinkling my shares with cliches because I wanted to connect. I wanted to connect really bad. So like death disease for me, I know it is for most of the other people on this room. And I wanted that feeling back. Well, I'm home again, and I couldn't find it. And I started to think, well, maybe Arizona just isn't the right place for me. It's not AA or anything else. I just have a different belief system. And somebody just happened to whatever regular AA meeting we were going to had already started, and they recommended the Free Thinkers meeting. And I went, and it's like, wow. I connect, I understand you, and you, and you, and you, and not just on the alcoholism level, but I felt that sense of sincerity again with people. They're speaking the language that I speak on the inside again, and I started to feel at home again. So these meetings are really, really important to me. AA on an umbrella level, but these meetings in particular, because this is where I get to come home and be home again. And pass. I'm going to open it up. Thank you.
Anybody have anything to want to share about that? I'm Randy. I'm I grew up going to a Baptist church a half mile from our house every time the door was open. My father was one of the few drunks around there. He had lots of friends that were drunks. And at one time or another, I saw almost every one of those people pour out booze and swear off and say, I've been such a fool, I'm never going to do it again. And usually in a few days, they'd be back to it. The few that got away from it and stayed away were miserable as hell. They didn't let anything back into place, and you wish that they would drink again. A lot of them were religious, and got on their knees and said the exact same prayers that we say the conventional AA says. They could not stay sober till they came to AA and they got sober. What did that prove? The only thing that was missing before was fellowship with fellow alcoholics. They said the same prayers to the same God, but it worked when they found the fellowship. If there's any literature that's conference approved that I really, really approve of, it's the preamble. We are a fellowship, not a program, we're a fellowship of men and women. And our primary purpose is to stay sober and help others achieve sobriety. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine, I'm alcoholic. I was really afraid the first time I was asked to speak from a podium and tell my story, as most of us have been. And I remember the bearing my soul and, sharing all my yucky stuff and people applauding, of course, as we all do. And even though I expected it, it did something. It opened my heart to realize that people were willing to love me for who I really am and my authentic self. And the fellowship and, the welcoming, the love that I have continued to receive has enabled me to feel free to be my authentic self. And that's something that has, it didn't happen overnight. It was like a little bit at a time, And then I found that two things happen in my life, inside and outside of AA, because I believe this is our classroom where we're supposed to learn to connect out there too, and that when I am authentic, it either encourages others to open their heart and be authentic as well, or they see it as a personal affront where it's reflecting their inability to be authentic and thinking that I'm doing something to make them feel a certain way. And I accept that today because everybody is on a journey, on a path, not just inside AA. So I'm delighted to be my authentic self, and sometimes it offends, but most of the time I receive love back. And that's really what this is about for me. Thank you.
Oh, hell, I was just looking for people who tolerate.
I'm Kathy Wilker, an alcoholic. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I got here by accident. I had a friend whose husband was ready to kick her out because one more time she'd emptied the bank account over the weekend. And I was a good friend, and I said, sure, I'll go with you. And we went on a Tuesday night, and meetings in California used to be hour-and-a-half meetings, and with a break in between. Patty left that meeting at the break, and I've been here ever since. And the reason that I stayed was because of what I saw amongst the people. First of all, the woman in front of the room told my story. I didn't have to wait long for that to happen. And the next thing that happened is I saw people laughing and being friendly and loving and caring. And those people carried me for the first 3 weeks of my sobriety. I was addicted to 4 different substances, alcohol being one of them. And I got pretty crazy for a while because I just put everything down at once. I was going to stay sober, by God. But it took me 6 months to figure out I was an alcoholic. They told me to go to AA because that's where the parent program was. And I said, but I don't know. And well, why? That's what I heard. That's what I heard because that's where the program is. But and it's true. Alcoholics Anonymous is the beginning of all the 12-step programs. But I just want to say thank you to everybody. I mean, what a thing this has been. And this lady up here she told my story. I heard it again. The language on the inside. I waited a long time to be able to bring it outside, and I'm so grateful. Thanks.
I'm Jamie. I'm just going to say very briefly, because John really touched on this. I spent my first 15 years in AA sober and my second 15 years as a chronic relapse. What got me sober the first time was the connectedness and finding something in these rooms I didn't find anywhere else. And for some reason, I don't know what, but I came back after my long relapse. I never found it in yet. And I'm still searching for it.
Hi, my name is Dan. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a member of the Sunday evening We Agnostics and Freethinkers group at Freedom Hall, 7:30 p.m. The first agnostic and freethinker meeting in the state. Very proud of that. Anyway, I just really enjoyed everybody's talking so far and all the sharing. And this is sort of a thing I'm always harping on. To me, the essence of Alcoholics Anonymous and what we're doing here is a conversation. The whole thing started in Akron, Ohio, of all places, with a conversation between a proctologist and a failed real estate or whatever he was, stockbroker, and, you know, the whole thing. There was no big book. There were no steps. There were no sponsors. Nobody had to worry about any of that stuff. The only thing that worked was two people suffering from the same problem who were trying to be honest with themselves first, and then with someone else. And the whole issue of connections, I didn't like AA when I came here. I hated it. I thought it was an obscure Lutheran sect. I wondered, back then it was only a quarter. It was only a quarter for, to throw in the where are all those quarters going? Who's getting all that money? That's where I was. But I kept coming because I was afraid to die. I was 27 years old, and I didn't want to die drunk. And the people in the room, I assumed that they were telling the truth. And so I kept coming, and in my opinion, the connection that I had to make first was the connection, like you said, to my real self, who I really was. I played a lot of roles. I've actually made a living as an opera singer and an actor and a musician, so I'm always playing a role. But it's different now. I was playing roles. I even wanted to be a priest at some point because that would please my family. And until I found my authentic self, my real self, that was the number one connection. And then I understood how this really works. And, I didn't have to worry about whether I was doing it right or not. If I didn't drink, and I was honest with myself and connected and talking to other people, then that's it. That's basically the whole thing. Because I'm not good with anything that feels like homework. You got to do the steps. You got to read this book. You got to go to a meeting every single day. That just feels like homework to me. And I'm defiant by nature and much smarter than most other people, so I don't really need to do that. So anyway, that's my spiel. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Something you said, in 8 minutes, it's really hard to say some of the things I'd like to have said, but for me, there was a period of time, and I usually talk about this in my long pitch, there was a period of time between 11 and, say, 17 or 20 years of sobriety that I've seen in a lot of people, not everybody. And for me, what happened was I got to about 11 years and I didn't understand why I felt, one more time, I felt disconnected. I felt like I've done so much work. Why am I not better? How come I haven't reached that spiritual mountaintop yet? And all of that kind of stuff. And it was just about all that shame that comes from that. And one of the things that happened to me is I ended up going into, forgive me for talking about this, I don't usually, but I ended up going into a sweat lodge. And not everybody has this experience, but I really experienced at a very visceral level how everything is interconnected. And that my feeling and my thinking that I wasn't connected, is part of the problem. And it's been, I'm 37 years sober, I think is what it is now, and over the years, I've gone through periods of time when I've had to go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And I don't think this is a process that takes very long, just a little bit longer than a lifetime. Once rigor mortis sets in, I'll have this sucker. So, I really feel that we can get to these spaces. I've been through cycles of depression because I'm a chronic depressive. I've been through cycles of depression that have been very difficult. But the people around me, not everybody, but some, pull me through. You know? So I hear people when they talk about this you were talking about chronic relapse, and I really feel for that because I know there were times when I could have easily gone there. I don't know, I'm just stubborn, I guess. And so I feel that. I just want to say that it's not unusual for us to go through that kind of stuff. I have a wonderful woman in my life who is 54 years sober, who's passed now, who told me I was about 33 years sober, and she said, the most difficult years of my sobriety were between 30 and 35. Thanks a lot, Louise. I just wanted to share that. We wax and wane, we go through cycles, I believe, and I know I have. And I continue to go through cycles, and I continue to try and deal with what is real. And sometimes that's depressing. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, hey guys, Tim, still an alcoholic. And one thing I just want to say is I absolutely had my heart touched here by a few people that shared, and my heart absolutely needed touching. This whole polarization that's happening in recovery and just human race is heartbreaking to me. And I've gotten a lot of hope out of this meeting, so thank you guys so much.
I got my hope.
This is a really important topic to me because when I came here, I felt very disconnected as well and wanted to stay that way, right? I did not want to be connected to y'all because that meant I was like you. So I worked really hard to stay disconnected. In spite of that, there were people who pulled me in and taught me that it's the steps that could, 2 through 12 are about me getting connected to myself, to a power other than myself, and to you, and to us as a collective, every single one of them. And until I went through those steps, I had no idea what being connected was about, because I didn't know how to love you, and I didn't know how to love me, and I didn't know how to feel the love you had for me. And over the years, I've been able to do that. I also think connectedness is really important because we find it when we find our tribe. But today, I feel it here. This is my tribe. These are my people, right? And AA I felt it in AA, and I felt it with non-believers. And when I went to that convention 2 years ago in Santa Barbara, and those two worlds collided, I was home, right? Because the two most important things to me were all, people were speaking my language. And for people, if you meet people like the lady that you were talking about, the Mormon, right, she just didn't find her tribe. And that makes me really sad, because I feel like that's part of my job. That's why I have that Catholic friend that throws people my way, right? Because that's what we do. We try and connect each other together to find that love and to find the hope that will get us through this life until we figure it all out. Thank you guys. I love your talk.
Thanks very much. I think, I'm mistaken here, but I think most of us in this room had an estrangement from traditional AA, and that's why, kind of part of why we're here. We have found connectivity within secular. That's really important to all of us. Anybody else?
I just waited until you got up here.
So I'm gonna probably reiterate what I said before and what Tim just touched on, but what I also have learned, and I appreciate the tribe thing and having people in common, but some of the greatest connections I've had have been with people who are different than me. I'm like you, it says, what man wants to be different than his fellow is me. I want to be different. And I didn't want to fit in, I wanted to stand out. And so feeling, I resisted connecting. I used to share and people would come up and go, thank you so much, I identified with what you just shared. And I tried to explain how they must have misunderstood what totally different than anyone else that you could have possibly identified with me. Because I was so invested in being different. And I had to learn that I am very different, but my differences don't have to separate me. That's where the healing came in, that connection with myself. Being connected with myself means I'm different than other people, but being able to connect even with the differences is more powerful to me than just meeting people. There aren't a lot of people like me. I have to learn to connect with people that are different, so that's all.
Thanks, anybody else? One in the back.
Get you some roller skates.
Good for it.
I'm an alcoholic. I had something happen in early sobriety. I was down at the Air Club. I was working downtown, and I went to a meeting at the Air Club, and they were still smoking, so half of the room was smoking and half was not smoking. And I think I quit smoking. Yeah, I quit smoking for it. But so I was standing in the back, and I was dressed for work, so I was in a suit and all that stuff. And there was this great big biker guy. And he had tattoos and a wallet on the chain and, leather and all that. And talking about connecting, this is when I really got it. He was talking about how he felt about something, I don't remember what it was, something that was going on in his life. And, if you had asked me before I went in that meeting, I would say that I had absolutely nothing in common with this guy. And not only that, but I was probably quite superior to him. I'm not sure that's how I saw it. And in that moment, I realized two things. That the only difference between us from a logistical standpoint is he got caught and I didn't. For whatever, sent him to prison because he'd been in prison. And that we felt the same. And that was such a huge thing for me because, it made me not only feel connected and realize that I could be connected to people that are so different, but it brought to light judgment that I had and what little value that was, especially in the rooms of AA, and I'm so grateful for that. Thanks.
Anybody else?
So Dave Alcaldo, a homage to the Jim who got sobriety and cleanliness at 80. And it made me think about the, let's say, 5 parts of the Serenity Prayer. So, not the first word. I grant myself, I seek a force, grant myself, grant me the serenity. After many years of serious osmosis through the chair, I did have a new experience in AA. And for that, I'm very thankful for Jim, who has passed on.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else?
I was concerned. My first impression of AA, my first meeting was where they say they're not affiliated with any sect or denomination, and then they preach about rigorous honesty, and then they close with the Lord's Prayer. And what for too much of hypocrites, and I do not want to belong to this group. But in between, I kept coming back, and it was because people talked about their feelings. And my whole life had been learned about how you play out the roles that you're assigned, and go through the actions, and you don't have feelings, or you don't talk about feelings, or you don't not even able to identify feelings. And that's where first ever felt like, oh my gosh, other people have some of the same stuff going on inside of them that goes on in me that nobody I ever heard talk about. And oh my God, people have feelings. I didn't even know because I never heard it anywhere else. And that's what kept me coming back. And it's really still what keeps me coming back. And that's the connection that I need. I'm not alone because other people experience the same stuff that I go through, and I never knew it. I never knew anyone else had those things happen to them, and something must be wrong with me because I'm the only one that's like this, and you better keep it to myself because I don't want anyone to see how different I am, and just keep trying to act that part, and my whole life was an act, and drinking helped stop the feelings because they didn't have an assigned role in the parts I was playing. There was nothing to do with them, and that's how AA saved my life. And it's because of the people and not the dogma.
I used to believe in Groucho Marx's old saying, I wouldn't belong to any club that would have me as a member. Anybody else want to share?
I'm Stacy. I'm still an alcoholic. When I came back into the rooms of AA, a mess, absolutely, well, we all know what it feels like. I walked into that door and I felt at home. I didn't even have 24 hours at the time again, it didn't matter. And I'm fortunate enough that I belong where I go down at Queen Creek that we don't get a lot of people sprouting out, well, you have to believe this, and it has to be the God thing. And a lot of them down there, they say, God is I choose, which I think is very progressive. But I think back to, and I don't know a lot about the history of how AA came to be, but how amazing for those two guys to realize that Christianity isn't like, alcoholism is not exclusive. I mean, it's going to affect, everybody. And it doesn't matter what you believe in. It's going to hit, you're going to get it, you're going to get it. And how amazing that they understood that and that they were able to, a little bit old-fashioned, but insert it into the literature that says, it doesn't matter what you believe in, just come into the rooms. And, and throughout the day, and I've heard stories about people who, groups who says, you don't belong here. And we should have bummer sticker. What would the W do? Because it's, the stories that losing my words, but on the phone, what would you, if you had said, well, what would Bill W say? So I think that the next time somebody brings that up, I'm going to ask them. No, what would Bill W say? Because I think when it came down to it, he didn't care. He didn't care who you bent the knee to. He didn't care what even that was. All he cared about was getting people sober and helping people stay sober. So, thank you.
I think it's important to remember that Bill W. and Dr. Bob both believed in God. They never kept them sober. They didn't get sober until they started talking to each other. One drunk talking to another. Anybody else want to share? Now we'll get closer. Oh, one more. Good. Another country heard from.
I just wanted to watch you move. Sarah, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I really enjoyed this so much today, and I did just want to watch you move. I've been in and out of the rooms. I'm 41, and I've got 9 months now. I really have just enjoyed this today so much because even though I am an agnostic, I'm a scientist, so it's like I do have kind of mixed emotions and one of the things that I've been struggling with is that my sponsor just keeps saying, fake it till you make it. And I'm wondering how many people here have heard that. How many people with your hands still up think that that's probably not the best thing to think? So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that goes right along with that rigorous honesty stuff. If there's somebody else that would like to share, we could at least have some closing remarks from the panel.
Well, I think I would add that from what Penelope said and what I've heard here, I still to this day remember, not wasn't that long ago, it was 9 months ago, when I found the agnostics group that is my home group. We were a small bunch that day, maybe 10, sitting around the carpet, not spread out, and it was just unbelievable to me because I really hated AA. I'm not sure I'm ambivalent now, I guess. But I liked these people, and they were saying the same shit that I had been saying to nobody. And it was just the greatest thing ever. I mean, I can't even, whatever. So yeah, keep coming back.
I just want to close with, I think it's duplicity that really gets me out there. And even in the rooms, a lot of duplicity. I noticed that when I had to pretend to believe in something, to belong to something so important to me, I was getting into trouble. That being able to come to the atheist agnostics freethinkers was just a godsend. To be able to be someplace where I get to be that authentic self.
Well, I became a non-theist in Alcoholics Anonymous. So there is hope. One of my favorite phrases is in the part of the book that all of us really love, Chapter to the Agnostic. One of them said something about we can only sweep away the ground a little bit. Surely the consciousness of your belief will come to you. Well, I was busy seeking the consciousness of my belief out there all the time. And I can tell you, it didn't work. But when I started going inside and trying to feel from inside what was going on, I started coming to a consciousness of my own belief. It has not been easy for me. As I told you, I went through a lot of years of training and indoctrination and dogma. And I spent a good 10 years having to really struggle with a lot of that stuff. And so I want to say that if you're struggling, if it's difficult, it can get better. I guarantee you, if you don't drink, you don't use, no matter what, it can get better. And I honestly do not know why I managed to not pick up in all these years. I'm not sure it's my fault. Except maybe I'm just a stuttering son of a bitch. But it has been very difficult at times, and at times it's just been like this, really lovely. And I thank you.
Thank you.